The January 6th Select Committee continues its political witch hunt. We've been following it for some time. We know Liz Cheney and Bennie Thompson and Adam Kinzinger and all of them are just going after every single Republican that they can get their hands on. They went after Sebastian Gorka. They've gone after Sean Hannity. Everybody's name on there. I'm waiting for my letter. But they're going after Jim Jordan. He's a representative from Ohio, and he is not having it. He actually responded back to Chairman Bennie Thompson in a letter on January 9th saying, I'm not going to give you any of this stuff, and you are out of line. Very interesting. And so he's got some little bit of rebuttal language that we're going to dive into. Let's start by taking a look at the letter. Where is it going? We know Bennie Thompson is the chairman of the January 6th Select Committee, and this is being drafted to his office. The entire committee we can see here drafted January 9th, 2022 from the Congress of the United States. Jim Jordan, Ohio, ranking member, sending it over, says, Dear Representative Thompson, the American people are tired of Democrats' non-stop investigations and partisan witch hunts. Your letter from December, unfortunately, continues this Democrat obsession. It amounts to an unprecedented and inappropriate demand to examine the basis for a colleague's decision on a particular matter, but pending before the House. This request is far outside the bounds of any legitimate inquiry, violates core constitutional principles, and would serve to further erode legislative norms. And what he's talking about here is they're part of the same House. This is the same House of Representatives. And to allow one select committee sort of blanket authority to go in there and investigate other members of the same body feels like it's a little bit of an overreach. You sort of think that everybody comes to the table with the same tools. You don't empower one highly partisan political body to have more tools of leverage against their political opponents in the same body. Doesn't make any sense. And so that's exactly what this representative is talking about. We see Jim Jordan down here in the bottom right. That's what he looks like. Let's see how this letter continues. He says, as you well know, Bennie, I have no relevant information that would assist the Select Committee in advancing any legitimate legislative purpose. I cannot speak to Speaker Pelosi's failure to ensure the appropriate security posture at the Capitol in advance of a well-publicized protest on January 6th. Says, I can't elaborate on former U.S. Capitol Police Chief Stephen Sund's statement about a concern about, quote, optics. Don't know why he said that. Following widespread calls from Democrats in 2020 to defund the police. I can't explain why that contributed to the limited security response. Says, I also have nothing to add to the bipartisan comprehensive findings of the Senate investigative committees or to those that issued by federal inspectors general. I cannot testify about the Justice Department's ongoing law enforcement efforts, although I am aware of reports that the FBI has determined the violence was not coordinated or part of, quote, any organized plot to overturn the election result. Oh, yeah, I'm familiar with that. There's a lot of other things I don't know that are going on, but I'm certainly aware that FBI said this wasn't an organized plot. And says, at the time of the security breach of the Capitol, I was present in the House chamber. I was performing my official duties pursuant to the Constitution and federal law. The other topics that you reference in your letter likewise relate to the performance of my duties. Your attempt to pry into the deliberative process, informing a member about legislative members before the House, is an outrageous abuse of the Select Committee's authority. This unprecedented action serves no legitimate purpose and would set a dangerous precedent for future Congresses. How would the Democrats like it? How would Nancy Pelosi like it if this were reversed? If we fast forward the clock, Donald Trump runs, let's say he wins, and he forms his own committee about a stolen whatever. Would the Democrats be okay with that? I would not be okay with that, just like I'm not okay with it here. It says, it is telling that the Select Committee has chosen only to target Republican members with demands for testimony about J6. Unlike many senior Democrats, I've been consistent in denouncing political violence and supporting law enforcement personnel, whether the violence occurred on January 6th or the summer of 2020 or wherever else. I am aware of no effort, he says, by the Select Committee to solicit testimony from Speaker Pelosi, House Administrator Chair Joe Lofgren, or any other Democrat members with the responsibility for oversight over the security posture on January 6th. This double standard confirms our suspicion the Democrats are using the Select Committee as a partisan cudgel against their political adversaries and not to advance any legitimate legislative purpose. Even if I had information to share with the Select Committee, the actions and statements of Democrats in the House of Representatives show that you are not conducting a fair-minded and objective inquiry. House Democrats have already prejudged the results of the Select Committee's work, declaring in their February 21 impeachment brief that Trump is unmistakably responsible for the events of January 6. Democrats have accused their colleagues of sedition, called them traitors for objecting to the Electoral College in certain states, an official action taken pursuant to federal law. And the same objections that you and other senior House Democrats made following 2000, 2004, 2016 presidential election. You've done it 3 times in the last 20 years. We can see it. He writes, Democrats violated the most fundamental and long-standing safeguard for fairness in House proceedings in standing up the Select Committee. In an unprecedented action, Speaker Pelosi rejected Leader McCarthy's chosen Republican members to serve on this fake committee. Pelosi also failed to consult with Leader McCarthy about the appointment of Republican members, in direct violation of the requirement in the resolution establishing the Select Committee that she do so. As a result, without any Republican members selected by the Republican leader, there's effectively no measure of balance or objectivity. They have Adam Kinzinger on there and Liz Cheney, who many people argue is not even going to be there, neither next year, after the elections take place. So we have a panel of essentially all Democrats. And the Republicans that are on there are largely in sync with the Democrats on these same issues. Liz Cheney, we've played many times on this channel, wandering around screaming about Donald Trump, very upset about him. So it continues. It says the conduct of the Select Committee to date reinforces the perception that it cannot be trusted. It cannot act in good faith. This committee is a joke. The Select Committee has abused fundamental civil liberties. It's investigating private citizens' political speech protected by the First Amendment, seeking to impose gag orders on telecom companies, demanding their data. When good faith disputes over privileged information have arisen, Select Committee has declined to make genuine efforts to obtain information through the civil contempt mechanism available through Congress. Instead, it's going through criminal contempt referrals. The Select Committee also failed to operate transparently, holding just a single public hearing to gather testimony. The Select Committee has exploited this lack of transparency to selectively leak information, alter and misrepresent non-public documents, and spread misinformation to paint a false and misleading narrative. Here, he says, are just a few examples. This is Leader McCarthy. Here he writes, here's 3 examples here for you. In a widely distributed letter, you falsely accused former New York Police Commissioner Bernard Kerik of attending a meeting in Washington on January 5th. Guess what? He was in New York City that day. During a business meeting to consider holding our former colleague Mark Meadows in criminal contempt, Adam Schiff, a member of the Select Committee, altered a text message that I had forwarded to Meadows, falsifying evidence. And also, your little fake committee, he says, during the fake floor debate on the Meadows criminal contempt resolution, Representative Jamie Raskin, another member of the Select Committee, falsely attributed a second text messages, quote, to a lawmaker, when in fact it was not sent by any member of Congress. If the Select Committee can so readily violate American civil liberties and mislead Americans about the information it possesses, including information relating to me, I have no confidence that the Select Committee will fairly or accurately represent any information I could provide. And make no mistake, any such information would be directly related to my deliberations and objections pursuant to statutorily prescribed procedure. I'm allowed to do these things, he says. The American people deserve better than the Democrats' incessant focus on partisan investigations. Rampant inflation hurting America, unmitigated crisis at the border. President Biden's weak leadership is wrecking everything. The real challenges affect our constituents, today their Congress. They should be properly focused. Signed by Jim Jordan. Jim Jordan obviously not going to be cooperating with the January 6th Select Committee. We know that a lot of other people have also refused to cooperate. Some of them are now facing criminal charges, talking about Steve Bannon. You can watch that video here. Steve Bannon being prosecuted for contempt because he's not complying. Jim Jordan also not complying, not going to be working with them. Are they going to charge him with a crime as well? He's a congressperson, but he's not complying with a fake congressional requests. So what are they going to do about it? We're going to follow it along. I hope you join us in that journey. Would love it if you subscribed and stuck around a while, left us a comment before you got out of here, because I look forward to seeing you on the next one.